Mike, I only feel like it's fitting to kick this podcast off with apparently you gave a guy a concussion in fantasy, or not fantasy football, flag football. What was it, yesterday?
It was on Monday, yeah.
So what happened?
I kind of feel bad about it, but you know that hit like that Emmanuel Sanders took, that one like back when he was playing St. Louis?
Yeah, where they got safeties. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, or they're both diving at the ball. And like neither one saw each other, and that's why it was such a violent hit, because no one slowed down at all. That was basically what this was. It was kind of like the guy was running a wheel route, and so there's a guy on my team behind him, and I'm playing safety, and I'm over the top. I know I'm getting there, and so I'm in a full sprint, and the guy kind of lays out like face first, and my shoulder went right into his face, and the guy he was not happy about it. Their team, it was flag football, and like on the top, like for like COVID reasons, they're like no contact is like in big red letters.
Flag football in the middle of a pandemic. It's a bold move.
And then the guy had to go home. So.
Interesting story there, my friend. Did you end up winning the game?
No, we actually got killed.
Oh my God. So you just freaking. Dude, just body bag season. Incredible. All right, well, let's kick this off. We were going to start with some prospects that caught your eye specifically, guys that necessarily weren't high on your radar going in, but have already put some good stuff on tape. We'll start with Auburn cornerback Roger McCreary, a guy that I know in the past has graded really well for us, has forced a handful of incompletions, has had his hands on the ball a handful of times. What were your thoughts on McCreary? Yeah,
so he was last year. Kind of, they had Noah Benogany as like the lone starter, and he was in like a rotation for the number 2 cornerback there, but it wasn't their slot cornerback. He was in rotation as an outside cornerback there for Auburn. 81.1 grade last year. Like I said, wasn't necessarily on our radar. That was him as a true sophomore. This past week though, against Kentucky, 89.6 coverage grade. The guy's pretty darn fast. I mean, now Kentucky's not the most talented passing offense. This isn't him going up against Alabama's wide receivers, but no one really beat him. Like no one beat him at all. The one catch he did give up was a screen, came up, made the play on it, and the one pick six he had, you saw his speed. The guy looks like he has legit, 4.4 flat speed, and that's already, if you have that at the cornerback position, you're going to get drafted usually. Like if you have 4.4 speed and you play at a school in the SEC at cornerback, that's a good thing for you. And I think he's even more than just that. So like I said, didn't make the PFF draft guide. I didn't even watch the sophomore tape. I'll just be honest, going into this year. But this guy, that's a legit prospect.
Yeah, an 81.1 coverage grade this past in 2019 on 586 total defensive snaps. And this past week, 76 snaps played and 87.6 PFF grade, allowed just 1 reception for 2 yards on 3 targets, had an interception and a pass breakup as well. That is have yourself a day territory for Roger McCreary. Moving forward here, need to talk about our guy, Jordan Smith. Is that the UAB edge defender, 6'7", 255. He's been popping off for a few weeks now because UAB's been playing a little bit longer than the SEC and actually like getting the job done. He had some opportunities against some decent competition as well. It wasn't all cupcakes and has still managed to produce a high pass rushing grade. I know our college analyst Anthony Tresh is high on Jordan Smith, maybe not as a prospect, but as a college football player. But you see him entering draft potential prospect territory.
Yes, so he actually graded out really well last year. And this guy, I did actually watch his tape from 2019.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he was 91.5 pass rushing grade last year, 92.7 run defense grade. He's one of the most productive edge guys in the country. But he was like 245 last year. This guy was skinny as can be at 6'7", did not look like an NFL prospect from that perspective. Just a weird body type, but he's filled out a lot. Like a lot more power, strength to his game this year, up to 255. And it showed in this one. South Alabama, watched that tape, went back and watched Central Arkansas tape, the Miami tape on him to see what he had. And this guy, I think it is actually an NFL prospect. Now, he's not super explosive by any means, but the fact that he's still getting bigger, still kind of growing into this ridiculous frame that he has is very encouraging. So to me, between him and Ali Gay, the guy we highlighted as one of the best performers from the past week, I think I'd rather have Jordan Smith right now. I think he's a better prospect.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I didn't see a lot on Ali Gay's tape where you're like coming away with explosiveness or anything like that. But 6'7", 255, earned a 91.5 pass rushing grade on over 300 snaps in 2019, 52 total pressures. And then through the last 3 games, Central Arkansas, Miami, Florida, and South Alabama, a 90.7 PFF pass rushing grade and 16 total pressures. If you haven't watched the guy, Might be time to turn on some Jordan Smith tape. He also wears number 22, which I think looks great on a guy that's 6'7", 255.
Do you? 22 is a tough sell for me for a D lineman. Single digits or 90s.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
Wow. I hate anything in the 50s, or you see some guys wearing the 60s in the D line. I'm never going to get them.
60s on the D line.
Isn't that Terrence what Wharton's wearing right now for the Kansas City Chiefs?
No, he's in the 90s.
I thought he was in the 60s. Never mind.
Who was it on Ohio State last year? It was like 67. I'm just like, you're screwed. You're not a prospect at that point.
All right, how about Larry Borum? You're just throwing monster names out here. You're just getting excited for there's a lot of new names on this thing. The Missouri offensive tackle, 6'6", 332.
That's literally the segment, Austin.
Yeah. guys caught your eye. But I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Larry Borum, Missouri right tackle, 6'6", 332. Started last year. Actually did all right. 69.6 pass blocking grade in 2019 for them. Looked like a different guy in this one. Alabama, it just looked more nimble. He's a big dude, has a basketball background. You always love to see that for offensive tackles. That was, what Eric Fisher was, everyone hyping him up as, he played basketball back in high school. Of course he did. He was 6'8". If you didn't play basketball and you were 6'8", what the hell is wrong with you? But no, Larry Borum, though, against Alabama, didn't allow single pressure. Very strong dude. Had some nice blocks at the second level against linebackers, envelops guys. Only a junior, so he, not any sort of hurry, I'd say, to come out. He might not be in this year's class, but just a name to watch going forwards. Looked like he's taken a pretty big step from what I saw in 2019.
An 85.9 pass blocking grade to open the season against Alabama is always going to be a standout performance. Rashad Weaver, that's a name that everyone has kind of seen a little bit on the draft radar. He's the Pittsburgh edge defender, 6'5", 270. Through 2 weeks now, an 83.3 overall grade and a 76.8 PFF pass rushing grade, 5 pressures apiece against Syracuse and Louisville. I watched both those games. You watch his pressures and how he's winning. I didn't come away super impressed. Didn't want to put him in that edge one, not edge one, but like that top tier of edge defenders. No. But he has been productive so far through this year.
He reminds me of, and not the same school scout, but a lot of like the way he plays the game is
Aaron
Jabal Sheard-esque.
Just kidding.
Jabal Sheard-esque. I think there's similar body types.
You love making comps to Jabal Sheard. I feel like you make it a handful of really good comps.
He's a very distinctive player though. But to me, so Patrick Jones is the other edge defender at Pitt, and Jalen Twyman was the defensive tackle who opted out. To me, he's by far the most impressive tape I've seen of any of those. Kemp
also had some hype coming out, the defensive tackle for Pitt, but he hasn't really panned out and lived up to it. But go ahead.
So Weaver tore his ACL last year, 2019, graded out well in 2018. Just a big physical sort of defensive end. Uses his hands really well. Like I said, already 5 sacks on the season. He's been very productive here. So caught my eye in a very good way there.
Alec Lindstrom, last guy we'll highlight here, the Boston College center, younger brother of Chris Lindstrom, and 82.1 PFF pass blocking grade through 2 weeks. Hasn't graded quite as well as a run defender, but he's got a little bit of a smaller frame, 6'3", 295. Where are you at with Lindstrom?
Yeah, so he's a redshirt junior. And you see very similar to his brother. He's just very athletic, but also plays more physical than 295 pounds. Mm-hmm. Like he plays a physical brand of football. Hasn't allowed pressure this year. Only allowed 5 pressures last year. Athleticism on the interior offensive line. You like guys. It's a good thing to have. You don't necessarily need it, but if you're undersized, it's a nice sort of piece. If you're a team that runs a lot of screens, gets your offensive lineman on the move, you're going to cover guys like Alec Lindstrom. Now, he played Texas State this past week and played Duke the week before that. Not world beaters, so we'll see when he goes up against, a real school like Notre Dame.
Real school like Notre Dame. Had to slip that one in there. All right, let's pivot to the NFL now and talk about some rookie matchups or rookies to watch in NFL Week 4. Mike, can you believe it's Week 4? I feel like the season flies, man. You build it up the entire, and this offseason was even different from a build-up perspective. And then just you get there and it's just gone. I feel like it goes by so quickly.
It really used to fly when I was doing analysis because it was so repetitive.
Yeah, you're just in a constant state of grading and games and collecting data. And then by the time you're done, the hours before you're done, the Thursday night game starts and you're back in the mix. So. All right, first guy we want to highlight, and this is your guy here, Logan Wilson going against James Robinson, the running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes, Logan Wilson, he's been getting more playing time. He had the pick last week, kind of a gimme pick, but it was still a nice play. I got tipped at the line of scrimmage. But he's just looked more comfortable after being a liability week 1, week 2. I thought
Bengals linebacker a liability, Mike? Yeah, it seems rare.
Breaking news. No, and then James Robinson, we've talked about him, how well he's played over the past few weeks. So I think those two, if they get matched up, will be fun. Even if they don't get matched up, but just watching those two. And Logan Wilson especially, how he develops, because I mean they used the 3rd round pick on him. They could have gotten a nice guard for Joe Burrow at that point. There's been some guards, Jonah Jackson, Damian Lewis, that were drafted in the 3rd round that would have massively upgraded their guard position there for Cincinnati. They passed on him for this guy, so it better be pretty damn good for Joe Burrow's health.
And actually, Cincinnati Bengals, our hometown Cincinnati Bengals. If you don't know, PFF is actually based in Cincinnati.
Yeah, we're in Cincinnati right now.
Huh?
We're in Cincinnati right now.
We are in Cincinnati, but with Cincinnati Bengals are at home, favored by 3 in this game. Joe Burrow, I don't think they're going to be favored many times this season. So being favored at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is a game they can win. This might be Joe Burrow's first win. I'm highlighting Joe Burrow in this game. I think it's going to be some of the easiest competition he's faced so far in his NFL career. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense against Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Miami Dolphins looked like shredded cheese out there. Yeah, Miles Jack has had a really good season thus far, but the pass rush has not been great. C.J. Henderson has literally was up in the first 2 weeks and then atrocious against Devontae Parker and Preston Williams in week 3. I think Joe Burrow, his grade has improved every single week so far through his NFL career, and this is going to be a defense where he can actually, dare I say, have some protection. I said this on the Monday podcast, but he's the only quarterback in the NFL that has been pressured on more than 60 dropbacks. The guy is getting body bagged every single game. Going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think you'll finally get something where Joe Burrow is not going to be on his back more than half the game. And if you give him that opportunity with the relationship, or not the relationship, but the chemistry he's building with T. Higgins, continue to get better throwing downfield, I think Joe Burrow is going to have a day here. It could be his highest graded game yet.
And after close, Josh Allen. He looked good against Miami. Miami's tackles stink, but looked all right.
I have a really good take on Josh Allen.
Go ahead.
Josh Allen, and when we talked to him, and when we interviewed him and talked about how much he's improved and all this stuff, he is one of the best players in the NFL, best young players in the NFL at getting better. He has gotten so much better at Kentucky, learning from that coach he had in his senior year at Kentucky and adding pass rush moves, et cetera. And then you look at what he's done to improve from 2019 to 2020, getting better against the run, more explosive, all that type of stuff. Like, scouting talent, I've always said, is so much easier, and why people are easy. It's easy to identify traits. It's easy to identify high potential, high ceiling players. Developing talent is some of the hardest shit in the world, and that's why you have players like Jamarcus Russell and other high ceiling prospects bust. Josh Allen had that ceiling and also the means to get better, and I think he's been as advertised entering the NFL.
And something that always floors me, and this is obviously a big tangent at this point, but is how few colleges focus on player development of skills.
None do.
so I mean,
how many players have we talked to TCU that say no one teaches me any moves?
like Ohio State, Bama's of the world, Clemson's.
The guys who can afford a Brian Hartline, a legit coach.
They're focusing on that sort of thing, and that was Notre Dame's claim to fame with their offensive line was Harry Hiestand would teach offensive line play from the beginning. You would have to relearn everything by the time you got to Notre Dame, and by the time you left, you were like a technician. So many schools are just oh, you're an offensive lineman, just here. This is your assignment.
Teach some technique,
but it's not. You're not building skill set, and so that's why it's such a big. It's such a big component of translating from college to the NFL.
And there are two concerns with that. One, the obvious one. You have a player or a prospect that has this potential but no skills. Two, you don't learn how a player develops. You don't learn how a player takes coaching and actually tries to build on his skill set. Instead, you find out Ben Banigou has been watching YouTube videos to learn to pass rush. Even LJ Collier doesn't have a counter because no one's taught him one. That is a problem. And that, I stand by this. The reason players bust is not because people are terrible at scouting players. It's easy to evaluate guys who have really good athleticism and high potential in the NFL. It's not hard at all. The problem is, it's how do you evaluate a player's ability to develop and improve, and that is always more difficult. It's hard to get in an interview. It's hard to get on tape, all that type of stuff.
Should we get masters in psychology? Is that what
I actually just got my master's last night.
You think PFF would pay for me to get a master's in psychology?
PFF would definitely pay for you to get a master's. No. All right.
Let's get scout.
Next prospect, or the matchup I wanted to watch. Joe Burrow is a little bonus. I'm excited for the matchup for Joe Burrow, but the one I wanted to look at is Jeffrey Okudah with his similar to Burrow, his easiest matchup of the year. Michael Thomas is not expected to play in this game against the New Orleans Saints. He'll be going against Emmanuel Sanders and Traquan Smith, which Emmanuel Sanders can be a tough cover. And Traquan Smith is a big, fast receiver, but it's nowhere near what he's been facing in weeks 2 and week 3 and DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. Like, I think Jeffrey Okudah has an opportunity to not get put in a blender this week. And I think that's just going to be a sight for sore eyes, because Jeffrey Okudah has had a really rough start to the NFL season.
Yeah, man, he has to be like, holy shit, the NFL is way tougher than that guy. It has to be eye-opening compared to what he saw. This will be far more like what he saw at Ohio State.
All right, next matchup for you is Jeff Gladney versus the speed of the Houston Texans.
Basically, in the similar vein to Jeffrey, this is like why you draft a corner like Jeff Gladney is because he can keep up with receivers like Will Fuller, like Brandon Cooks, like Kenny Stills. Those are the matchups he should win and should look good against. If he doesn't, we're concerning. We're talking about that's a little concerning at this point. Now, again, you don't write any corner off this early in the season. You're not going to write anyone off this early in the season. You're
not going to write anyone off this season, period, because of how hard it was to, I feel like, for rookies at all positions to really adjust to the abbreviated offseason, et cetera.
But again, if a guy really is going to turn into a Pro Bowl level player, all pro level player, you got to see something. Yeah. Like that they show something as a rookie almost always. So
looking at Jeff Gladney through, this year, it looks like he played in week 1, he played 55, or week 1, he played 9 snaps. Mm-hmm. In week 2, he played 60 total snaps with 55 at outside corner. And in week 3, they split him 30 and 34 at slot corner and wide corner. Mm-hmm. It's trial by fire for this guy. Khalif Raymond put him in a blender in week 3, and then week 2 wasn't good either. He's earned very low grades through 3 weeks now. And against Indianapolis, he earned a 37.9 PFF coverage grade in week 2. I think it will get better for Jeff Gladney, but I still think he's a long ways away from having like really good games because I think the game is still too fast for him despite his athleticism.
And I had this conversation with just yesterday with Matthew Collar on his show, the Vikings Purple Insider, about when you give up on like young corners like this. When do you say, hey, like the Eagles? The Eagles refused to give up on Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, who else? Jalen Mills in that secondary. Said they're going to develop. They didn't, and it torpedoed basically a few years for them. I think there's been teams that have done that where they went all in on the cornerback position or all in the secondary with young guys, and they just never developed. Yeah. And then that puts you behind the 8 ball. And that's, to me, you have to recognize if a guy's not, and I said the biggest thing was making plays on the football year 1. If you don't see a guy make numerous plays, like high-level plays on the football, I'd be ready to not necessarily give up, but move on and say we need to address it because it's the most, we call it the second most valuable position after cornerback or after quarterback in the NFL. If guys like Gladney and Dantzler aren't making plays on the ball by the end of year 1, I think it's time to move.
And Jeff Gladney was one of the guys in college that always was around the football.
Exactly.
Like, always had really high passes defense. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's 2 ways. There's the Eagles version where you've already invested a ton in young cornerback talent and you're looking to develop it and you're not addressing the position moving forward. And then there's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers version where you've invested at the position in multiple drafts and continue to do so until one of these guys hits. Yes. You've seen them in multiple drafts now continue to add defensive backs. Mike Edwards of Kentucky, Sean Murphy-Bunting of Central Michigan, obviously Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield Jr. this past year. Like, they just continue to draft young defensive backs, and they're not quitting on anybody, but they're just trying to find someone who's actually going to play.
Yeah, the fact that they draft Antoine Winfield a year after they had drafted a safety in the 3rd round who was a starter, and then a year before that drafted a safety in the 2nd round who was also a starter. Like, so many teams would just be like, okay, we're fine at safety. Which
is ridiculous.
Trust my evaluation. These guys are going to be good. Buck's saying no. Antoine Winfield's probably had a 1st round grade, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's that good. I think he dropped a lot because of his injuries, the multiple ACLs or whatever. But like that is, and now they have a player like Antoine Winfield who's a legit difference maker, and they look the part.
All right, another young cornerback I wanted to highlight to watch this upcoming week is Trayvon Diggs. I mean, he's earned a 49.5 PFF coverage grade through 3 weeks. He's been thrown right into the fire, 134 coverage snaps played, 224 total defensive snaps played through his rookie career, has allowed 15 receptions from 22 targets for 223 yards. It's up there with the most yards allowed by any corner in the NFL. He does have 3 passes defense. I think there's been a handful of receptions he's allowed where he's been at the catch point. That Van Jefferson one still has me on tilt. That was just a ridiculous throw by Jared Goff in week 1. But I will say this about Trayvon Diggs. If he doesn't get his hands on you, and we've seen him not get hands on people, he's getting toasted, especially on the vertical route tree. You saw that against DK Metcalf in week 3. What I'm looking forward to for Trayvon Diggs is to actually go against Odell Beckham Jr. in this game and see how he holds up. I want to see him at the line of scrimmage. I want to see him get his hands on guys, like similar to what Marlon Humphrey did to him a year ago in terms of just getting physical with OBJ. It's probably the only way you're not going to get burnt on a handful of routes there, because if they continue to play him off coverage, they played him in the slot in week 2, it's just not going to really work. Like, this guy's not ready for two-way goes in the NFL. Put him at outside corner and give him an opportunity to press at the line of scrimmage. If he gets beat down like he did against Jamar Chase and LSU, you have some problems. However, I think you put him in a better position to succeed if you give him that opportunity to use his hands and get physical at the line of scrimmage. We'll see how it pans out for Dallas.
Yeah, and there was some debate, or I saw Cowboys fans talking about the not almost touchdown he gave up to, DK Metcalf, that it might not have been on him.
I did see that.
It was 100% on him. It was quarters to that side. And you have a linebacker coming underneath you on quarters. You just have to stay over the top of any route at that point. You can't let a guy, and he bit on like an outside. It was kind of like a corner post that DK ran. He bit on it. That was 100% on Trayvon Diggs. That's very much what I would call a rookie mistake there to allow that route to happen, because it just shouldn't. You should beg that guy to run the deep comeback or whatever out route he bit on there.
All right, who's the next rookie to watch here?
The next rookie is, for me, Chase Claypool, because he finally got full time. Like, he finally was playing.
He's been really good this year.
61 snaps, yeah, 61 snaps last week. He got a PI, but it wasn't really much on the deep post route. It wasn't really like, he didn't really do much. It was just the corner being a dumbass, not adjusting to where the pass was going. And one catch for 24 yards on 3 targets. So he didn't, after, monster, amazing catch week 1, big play week 2, kind of fell flat a bit in that game, I would say, over expectations. But I'd like to just see him again with a full time. Like, does Big Ben trust him? Is he going to be going to a more against the Titans secondary that's pretty solid across the board? Like, they have, they go 1, 2, 3 with fairly good.
Justin Jefferson thought they were pretty solid.
Yeah, sure. But he was toasting. Jonathan Joseph taking snaps from when he's 30, whatever.
Well, they need Adoree Jackson back healthy.
Yeah. But taking snaps from, how are you not going to be playing Christian Fulton? How are you playing him over Christian Fulton? Jonathan Joseph is 36 at this point, right? He's just the old. Is he the oldest
39.
cornerback?
No,
is he the oldest cornerback in the NFL?
Probably is.
That's just absurd to me that he's still.
All right, last matchup I want to highlight here. I had the Joe Burrow as a bonus, but if Devontae Adams plays this week, which I think he'll be a game time decision, Darqueze Dennard's on the injured reserve. I think we're going to see a little bit of AJ Terrell versus Devontae Adams, so he might be getting the Jeffrey Okudah treatment coming up here. They don't play their corners at the line of scrimmage a ton. He's played a ton of off coverage so far this year, but I still want to see AJ Terrell kind of continue to sort this thing out. I remember my biggest takeaway from his week 1 performance is that the game is way too fast for him. And then in week 2, he had some good plays, coming up on the run, making plays in the flats, etc. Against a downfield route tree, I still feel like AJ Terrell is going to be behind the 8 ball a bit, and I think they're going to test him against Green Bay. I think it's going to be, I highlighted corners on all 3 of my matchups here in addition to Joe Burrow, but rookie corners are getting a ton of play right now. There's so many rookie corners in the NFL, like legit starting. Diggs, Okudah, Terrell, Cameron Dancer when he's healthy, Jeff Gladney. It's
there's probably more rookie corners that are actually like starters than rookie wide receivers.
I mean, Damon Arnett was starting before he had the thumb injury. I think he's going on the injured reserve. The best of them all, I think, has been Jalen Johnson. I think C.J. Henderson is still the highest graded. But after seeing that performance on week 3, I got a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, that was just a boneheaded, out of sync performance from C.J. Henderson, the same ones we saw at Florida when he was getting beat by other receivers as well. Let's jump to our NFL Greenline picks, and then we'll get a message from our sponsors here. But first, who is your Greenline pick this week? And if you don't know what Greenline is, it is a PFF betting dashboard, all made available to Elite subscribers. So I encourage you to subscribe to Elite and see our projections for every NFL and NCAA game. Looking at Greenline, Mike, where are you trending?
I like the Patriots getting 7 points against the Chiefs this week. And I get that the Chiefs just, put a hurt on the Ravens, and everyone, was picking the Ravens in that one, whatever. They were trending 2 different ways. But I just think Bill Belichick doesn't get blown out. Like, 2 scores against Bill Belichick, how many times has that happened with him?
I like it at that 7 number for sure.
Be like, 7 means you have to win by, 8. Okay, I was gonna say 2 scores, but you could win by 1 score would be at 8, but which is actually like a 1.5 score game because 2-point conversion's not guaranteed whatsoever. But I just think that they're the type of team with how they can play man coverage and how they can control the clock that, not saying they're going to beat the Chiefs, but they can keep close.
And right now, according to PFF Greenline, 65% of the cash and 66% of the tickets is on KC to cover that 7 number. We'll see if you're the sharp in this situation. Where I'm trending right now is I see a 7.5 number on the slate. I always get a little excited. And that 7.5 number for me is our Atlanta Falcons taking on the Green Bay Packers. And I know a bulk majority of the cash and tickets have been on Green Bay in this one. The Atlanta Falcons have been a disaster in late in games, have lost a lot of games. However, I still believe that in their ability to put up points. I still believe in their ability to keep games close. The games that they've lost this year have all been close in some way, shape, or form. 7.5 is even, you're not even getting that push territory. You're through that key number. I'm putting money on the Atlanta Falcons to keep this one within a touchdown. I don't think they win this football game. It's in Lambeau. However, if Julio Jones can come back, which I expect he doesn't miss more than a week, you have Calvin Ridley there as well. I know they have a really good secondary there in Green Bay, led by, I think, what is the highest graded cornerback in football in Jair Alexander. Yeah. I still believe, though, in this Atlanta Falcons team being able to put up points and score with the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers is going to score as well, but I don't think they cover that 7.5 number quite yet.
Yeah, 7.5 seems like a lot with how bad the Packers defense has been.
Yes.
Like they've allowed.
I mean, Greenline has a 3.1% edge on that 7.5 number. We see the spread at 6.9.
Yeah. That's just, like Packers, obviously, they've been the best offense in football through 3 weeks. And I do not doubt that they'll still shred the Falcons defense, but you telling me that the Packers are going to match up well against, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones when Drew Brees was throwing 2-yard passes on them all day and put up 30 points. I just don't think that the Packers have enough defensively to. I agree with you. Cover that.
And they have some key players. They have key players working back from injury. I mean, Lane Taylor's on the injured reserve. Devontae Adams Clark. And Kenny Clark are questionable for this game. Obviously, the biggest concerns for. The biggest concerns for Atlanta is Julio Jones, Grady Jarrett, not being questionable right now. We'll see how that game ends up. All right, we're going to jump to the college slate.
Knowing the Falcons' luck, they're both going to be out, and Devontae Adams, Kenny Clark are going to be in. That's just how it works.
That would be horrendous for my 7.5 pick. I don't like that juju, my friend. All right, we're going to jump to the college portion of this podcast where we look at prospects to watch and our NCAA Greenline picks. But before we do that, let's talk to the sponsors. Back to the college slate. Mike, there's some good games this week. The SEC is back, so there's always going to be better prospects to watch than there were in the first, 2 or 3 weeks of the college football season. Now that the SEC is back, I know you want to highlight an alien playing in South Carolina going against J.C. Horn. Not going against J.C. Horn, sorry.
J.C. Horn being the guy from South Carolina. And Israel Mukuamu. Just going up against, actually, it's more Mukuamu going up against Kyle Pitts, who is the...
You think they're going to have him on Kyle Pitts?
I don't know. I think you
Why
should.
Not?
That's your best bet of stopping that guy because he's like we were talking a little bit with Steve and trying to think of body type comps for Kyle Pitts because he's really more of a big wide receiver than he is actually a tight end at this point. And
I like the Darren Waller body comp. And Darren Waller was 6'6", 240 coming out.
Yeah. But I think at some point he'll get up to 255, 260. He's only 20 years old. He has the frame to do it. But I almost like the where his game is as a receiver, just staying at that size because he's athletic enough where I think he's just going to be kind of that guy who's a mismatch for everybody that he goes up against. Because if you have a guy like Mukuamu who thrives on, so Israel Mukuamu, the South Carolina quarterback, we've talked about him before, but he's 6'4" himself. He's a monster himself.
6'4", 205.
205 at cornerback. But he can't move. He's not nowhere near as fluid as Kyle Pitts is at tight end. And so I think that, if you say, we got this guy who's 6'4", can shut him down, I think, no, you can't. It's still going to be a mismatch to me. But if you have a guy like J.C. Horn who's smaller, more athletic, I think the size is then going to be a mismatch. He gets physical on his routes, Kyle Pitts does. So,
dude, really physical on his routes. And I think it makes it very difficult for him to stop. I mean, J.C. Horn's the other cornerback there, wears number 1 for South Carolina, allowed 0 receptions from 2 targets in week 1 against Tennessee. Mukuamu, on the other hand, 4 receptions allowed from 5 targets for 61 yards. I'm just excited to watch Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask play football again. Because, this was just
electric,
such a fun, it was a great the SEC is back type of moment to see legit NFL talent, top 15 talent in terms of Kyle Pitts play football on Saturday.
And also how just boring was Florida's offense for 5-6 years. They had one of the most painful offenses to watch in the NFL. Watching Felipe Franks try to complete a 5-yard out compared to what we saw last weekend is just night and day. So excited.
I will say too, when the SEC was back, I remember going by your apartment on the Banks, and I saw so many people at 8:30 at night because bars close at 10 here in Ohio, just completely gone. One dude was blacked out, had an ambulance call for him, and he like couldn't even see. It was insane to see like the SEC is back and then everyone
there was a fire
died.
too. There was like a fire at.
You also had the University of Cincinnati, winning a nice game. I think Navy or Army, whoever they played.
They covered.
They did cover. I'm going to jump into my prospects to watch here. I'm excited to watch more Alabama football, specifically Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 2, Mike. Behind Jamar Chase, I could get on board. I want to see more.
So he's 3 right now for us.
Yeah, he's 3 right now.
Got Rondale Moore too, because fucking Rondale Moore.
Yeah. Right now, the rankings for PFF is Jamar Chase, Rondale Moore, and then Jalen Waddle. But man, Jalen Waddle looked really good in week 1. I think I want to see him build on that performance. But in addition to that, I want to see a little bit more from Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith did not have a wow game like Waddle had in week 1. You're not going to have one every week.
That was his MO though. He was like either 200 yards or 30 yards.
Yeah. So we'll see how Devontae Smith does against Texas A&M. But, like, it's an Alabama Brown football, baby. You're just turning on that game. You're going to see some highlight plays. Mac Jones looks electric. Christian Barmore playing well. Dylan Moses. Patrick Surtain. There's just so many prospects on that Alabama team right now that every single week they play is a game to watch, and we're probably going to highlight it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be watching pretty much every Alabama tape because
I'm going to watch every single game.
I got the take that they're going to tie Miami for the most first-rounders. They're going to have 6 first-rounders this year.
Oh, wow.
They're going to have 6 first-rounders.
Name them.
Okay, it's going to be Christian Barmore, Alex Leatherwood, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Patrick Surtain, and Dylan Moses.
Wow. And you have Devontae Smith going in the first round. Yeah. You weren't as high on him as other people were.
Yeah.
Maybe he slipped up. I think just for a second.
All right, my matchup to highlight here. Seth Williams, Auburn wide receiver, going up against Tyson Campbell, Georgia cornerback. He is, in my opinion, the far better of the two between him and Eric Stokes at Georgia. They get really physical with their opposing wide receivers there, those Georgia cornerbacks.
DeAndre Baker was as physical as it gets.
Yeah. And
off the field as well.
He got a little aggressive. But Seth Williams dropped weight this year, dropped about 10 pounds. Looks different.
Same.
Like he looked considerably different. Good for you. So he's 6'4", I think 215 now he's listed at after being like 228 or 225 last year. Junior wide receiver, big contested catch sort of guy, had a nice little highlight reel snag on a fade last week against Kentucky. But I just want to see, Tyson Campbell's a long cornerback. That's kind of who I would worry about him going up against the NFL. Can he get off press? That sort of thing. Can he separate? I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully Bo Nix hits him, though, because Bo Nix is
can't hit the broadside of a barn right now.
I was watching Seth Williams' targets from last week, and probably like 3.
Dude, Seth Williams' targets last week were tough to watch because he was just not getting accurate throws. And Bo Nix was creating contested catch situations for him. There were a handful of situations where he could have threw him open, and then he has to work back to the ball or work back to where he threw it, and it was kind of rough to see. I have Nick Bolton here, the linebacker from Missouri, going against Tennessee. A lot of people really like Nick Bolton. They're getting on board. I think he was the highest graded linebacker for PFF in 2019, and so far this year has looked really, really good. I thought he looked good against Alabama. I think with Nick Bolton, you love the athleticism. You love how he plays with his hair on fire. I just think you want to see more of the production, more of the headiness that you need at the linebacker position to succeed. And I think he has some of that, but continue to see more experience and more tape is always good for Nick Bolton. Yeah,
he plays an exciting brand of linebacker.
He does.
That is for sure. All right,
he takes people's heads off.
My last guy, not even a matchup. I just want to watch Trevor Lawrence again. We get him back. It's going to be...
You could do it every week. I mean...
It's the best. I know I can, but he plays Virginia this week.
Let's have a little conversation
Probably
about Trevor
a better
Lawrence.
defense than Wake's or Citadels. I mean, definitely better than the Citadels, but probably better than Wake's as well.
I have a few questions stemming for Trevor Lawrence. Okay. Obviously, the favorite to be the number one...
holes in him?
We're not poking holes in him.
Okay.
Obviously, the favorite to win the number one to be the number one overall pick, and there's a handful of teams that are going to be bidding for that. The Washington football team is one. Obviously, the New York Jets is another. What is your opinion of if the New York Giants are selecting number one overall?
This one is one of those where I think everyone can agree. If you ended up with a number one overall pick, you just take Trevor Lawrence. You figure out what to do with whoever you had until, but like if you. And I could see them getting the number one pick and drafting Penei Sewell, which would be just
insane
and the craziest, the worst decision that would ever.
I have
happen
a take after yours. Go ahead.
But I think Trevor Lawrence is universally agreed upon to be too good for anyone to ever screw up, and not even just to screw up, to even like entertain trade offers and be like, hey, we're going to give you our next 2 drafts. No, it's not worth it because you can still miss on picks. I don't think you're going to miss on Trevor Lawrence.
I think that, there's a handful of teams where it's obvious. The Washington football team, it's obvious. The New York Jets, it's obvious. I think the team that comes up that could be drafting number 1 overall, that maybe it isn't as obvious, is the New York Giants, because they still believe in Daniel Jones and they want to build around him. And with that being said, they are the team that I feel like is drafting number 1 overall would be the ones to trade out of it.
But here's the thing also is if they're drafting number 1 overall, I don't think Edelman survives that, because they went 7-9 his first. Like, their record's gotten worse every single year. And if you draft,
but they don't have their best offensive player, Mike.
If you draft your guy at quarterback and in year 2 he's so bad, and he doesn't have a ton of a great supporting cast, but it's not dreadful. It's not what Sam Darnold's working with, that's for sure. And if they have the number 1 overall pick after that, it's kind of on you. As a GM, I think he's gonna. I don't think you would survive that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Very difficult.
Obviously, right now, I think the favorite to get the number 1 overall pick, but I don't think it stays that way, is the Atlanta Falcons. And even if they were drafting number 1 overall, it's obvious that they take Trevor Lawrence, even with Matt Ryan and the career he's in right now. Even if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play
they're not
as a rookie,
get the number 1 overall pick. They're too good.
Yeah, I think they're too good.
The interesting one to me would be if the Bengals really bottom out.
Yeah.
What do they do if they? They're 0-2-1. I don't think they're going to be 2-14. I'd be hard pressed to me to see them be that bad. I think they're a more talented team than that.
You mean 2-13-1?
But they're playing in a tough division in the AFC North, and they've already lost to probably the weakest other team in the AFC North. So that could be 6
and they
losses.
Or didn't lose. They tied the Eagles, which is another terrible team in the NFL.
And so I do think there is that would be the one where it's what do you do if you're the Bengals?
I think you have to trade out of it. You have to trade out of it. You're the highest bidder.
I think you draft Lawrence and trade Burrow at that point.
Really?
I would.
Oh my goodness! Look at you.
Because what's the trade? The trade out of it would be, very similarly. The return. If Burrow looks like he has first 3 weeks for the whole season, the return would still be huge. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. All right, last one for me is going to be the Mississippi State offense led by KJ Costello, Kylan Hill, and obviously Mike Leach going against Arkansas as 18-point favorites. You thought you had highlight reel, record-breaking passing yards against LSU. Let's see it against Arkansas, where I think they could just light the SEC again on fire and continue to build up Kylan Hill's draft stock, who I think, and if he entered the draft this past year, is a day 3 pick, late day 3 pick, now could push himself into a high day 3, maybe low day 2 type of pick for Kylan Hill. Because if you prove you can be a pass-catching back in the NFL, you instantly have so much more value than any other NFL backs. So it'll be interesting to see as he continues to work and catch. Probably going to get targeted at least 5 times, not at least 5 times a game, but maybe average 5 targets a game in Mike Leach's offense, which would be fun.
It is hilarious to me that people almost doubt Mike Leach to a degree, or that scheme won't work in the SEC, or there's even that conversation when Texas Tech and Washington State were disasters of football programs. Those were not good football programs. And he took them to relevancy. The fact that there are sound principles to this offense, obviously, that work, and in 2 different conferences already, and say it's not going to work in the SEC. I think he's just a very good football coach. I think people maybe he's not a good recruiter. Maybe he's not the most personable guy as head coach, but what he does schematically works every single stop of the way. And how he coaches up his offensive line and receivers and quarterback. They are well coached offenses as well.
All righty, let's move to our NCAA Greenline picks this week. This is all presented by PFF Greenline, available to elite subscribers, a betting dashboard that is a lot of fun to use. What is your pick this week?
I'm going deep cut here after I got fucking burnt by Florida State. We're going to go another dog here. Tulsa going up against UCF. UCF's a 21.5-point favorite. That's doing a disservice to Tulsa's defense. This defense has some NFL talent on it. Zaven Collins, linebacker, Jackson player, the nose tackle. They got a 6'4" safety named Kendarian Ray. They held Oklahoma State to 17 points. Oklahoma State, pretty damn good offense in their own right.
Absolutely.
I just think 21.5 is a ton of points for UCF. Now, I love UCF. I picked them to make the playoff. Love Dylan Gabriel, 90.5 passing grade so far this year. But 21.5 points is a lot with going up against, like I said, a defense that I think is actually fairly good. So Tulsa,
you love chasing a dog, Mike.
I know. It's more fun that way.
Yeah. All right, well, you know what is fun? What's really fun is rooting for unders. Who doesn't like rooting for unders? My Greenline pick last week was an absolute bad beat and sweat. Watching with Dr. Eric Eager, he also had some cheddar on that game. When Missouri crossed the touchdown in the final seconds to kill the under was just a brutal beat. This week, I'm rooting for another under. It's under 62.5 with Oklahoma against Iowa State. Brock Purdy has not looked good this year. Yeah, he's put up 37 points against TCU and 14 points against LA Lafayette. And even this past week, Spencer Rattler didn't look his normal brand of football and struggled a bit against Kansas State. However, this is the Big 12. Points get scored a ton, and people love rooting for points. I think there's overall a market value on unders in the Big 12 because everyone's betting on overs in the Big 12 because of the defenses are so bad. I see it as a value. Greenline has it at a 1.1% edge. I'm taking the 62.5 under Oklahoma, Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State's offense has not been good either. The
way they cover this number is Oklahoma scores like 60 itself. You know, that's where I see it happening because I don't know if Iowa State's going to be able to do it. I don't see this being a 30 plus type of game.
Last week's against K-State where it was like 35-38. No, I can get on board with that. And I can ride with you.
You better get on board with it. Greenline supports it.
But here's the thing: is like I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
I want to see Brock Purdy carve it up. I want to see Spencer Rattler carve it up. So
Same.
No,
well,
I'm not getting on board with you.
That's where the market value is, Mike. Everyone wants to see these points.
What am I trying to do? Make money or feel good about myself?
It's a good question. That's an existential question.
That was actually a good
I don't know if we're ready to answer that. I'm going to refuse to answer that. But well, let's end on that one, Mike. I think that was a good one. This has been the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast. Remember, rate and review the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure it's automatically downloaded to your phone. We want to be in your phone consistently. We didn't like that. I didn't really like that. Either way, make sure to subscribe, download, rate, review the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast. Until next week, our Monday edition, we review a ton of prospects and a ton of rookie performances. However, we don't get to every single one. And if we don't get to a guy that like, hey man, I'm a big whatever fan and I wanted to, your opinion of this this player, this rookie, this prospect, please, in the review, you leave a 5-star review with his name. We'll get to him on the Wednesday podcast. I know it's a preview podcast, but we'll open up a segment to talk about guys you guys bring up in the review. So make sure you do that on Apple Podcasts. Leave a 5-star review. Leave a name for us to get to on Wednesday podcast moving forward, and we'll hammer them because we're not going to get to every guy, Mike. We go in here every time. We're skimming guys out of our outline here. We're not going to get to every guy. So do that for next week. Until next time, Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.